Hello and welcome. You're watching NewsX and I'm Megha Sharma. There is quite the commotion that is growing over the alleged use of an AK-47 that was being brandished and fired purportedly by a police constable in Bihar, which ended up reportedly hurting 3 individuals who were part of the protest. There is a clarification that has come from the Bihar police headquarters saying that it was not an AK-47, it was a firearm that was quote-unquote fired in the air, and it has mentioned that there were 4 shots that were fired in the air and were not on the target of the protesters by the cops. I'm going to start my conversation on this very volatile subject. I have with me SP Vaid, former DGP Jammu and Kashmir. SP Vaid, thank you very much for speaking to me. And the situation as it stands in Bihar, what's your perception?
Good evening, Megha, to you and to my co-panelist and also the viewers. What I could make out from the visuals, now I don't know how many rounds have been fired. It appears to be AK-47, but we have to go what Bihar Police Headquarters says. And if they say it, they must be saying on basis of some truth. So, because they know it better, they were on the spot. And you see, generally, for the students' protest, you don't have people with the AK-47 rifle. Generally, it's not the practice, not the SOP also. The minimum force has to be used, maybe tear gas, stun grenade, or chili powder, or water cannon, and all those things. If all those fail, then maybe lathi charge is resorted to. And as a last resort, what we saw in Delhi, almost lynching of the RAF Jawan, and injury of about 130 policemen, including Delhi police senior officers and RAF people. So in that situation, even if you are issued pellet gun or firearm, because if somebody is getting lynched, the police has to resort to use of force, and that, maybe as a last resort. So what you saw in Bihar, what I can make out from the visuals, maybe he was PSO of some officer, SHO or the SDPO of that area, or possibilities the KORT, because what India is confronted with is not only the internal security, the mob violence situation, but also we must understand terrorism. And you know, when we joined service, AK-47 was never the weapon of police. We all had 303 rifles, and that was issued to the people, to the police party in such situation. As a last resort, they used to fire. And we have seen some people getting even injured and getting killed in situation of riots. But these days, not only in J&K police and Punjab and Delhi, in many places, the AK-47 rifle has been issued, whether they are KORTs, because you have to fight terrorists also. But as far as students are concerned, we all are parents, we all have our children as students. So generally, we don't use firearms. And in fact, it is the effort is that no harm comes to the children. But what you saw in Delhi, I don't know much about Bihar or Patna, but Delhi, so many people were injured. So I think pellet gun had, if it was the weapon of issue to RAF, I think is RAF person seeing his colleague getting lynched, he is within his right to use a pellet gun. I don't know what fuss is about in the parliament going on this. Yes.
Yeah, but okay. I don't know. I've not heard of any such report that a policeman was lynched at the Jantar Mantar protest, after which a pellet gun was purportedly used by his colleague on the protester. All right. Ashok Kumar is a former DGP Uttarakhand. He's joining me on the telecast. Ashok Kumar, I can see very clearly in this video that the shots that have been fired by this police personnel, this constable, are aiming at the protesters who are running away from the police at that moment when the firearm shot those shots. The police clarification that has come from the Bihar police headquarters in fact says quite the opposite, that the firearm was used to shoot in the air. Now, I mean, if you have a video that you see and it is in quite the contrast of what the statement, official statement of the police is, how do we even begin to figure out what happened on the ground?
See, the video that is available, that clearly is not firing in the air. That is true, as our Mr. Vyas sir has also said it. But now, on what grounds is Bihar police saying so? I cannot say. They must have some ground because of which they are saying. Maybe this video belongs to somewhere else. Maybe this video is AI generated. I don't know. Because the video, in this particular photo or video, the person is certainly firing at the straight. He's not firing in the air. So there has to be one of the two has to be wrong.
But the police personnel, this constable has been suspended since.
So
it's not like his face is actually identifiable in that helmet and the covering that he has done on his face, but he has been identified. He was the only police personnel, only cop on the ground who had the rifle, the gun that he's handling. He has it. We do not know right now whether it was an AK-47 or any other gun. He is the bodyguard of the superintendent of police of Bihar, and as per reports, the superintendent of police was injured with the protesters getting violent, reportedly throwing pelting stones, after which his bodyguard, this police constable, reacted and shot and fired at the protesters. So this is what certain reports are saying. Now, how do we go into the depth of the situation to find out the truth when we have contradictory statements coming in from the police, official statements versus what we see? Are we at this point of time assuming that this is a deep fake? This is a video that has been generated by artificial intelligence? Is this what we are saying now?
No. I will come back. The facts that you have told me, then it is quite possible. It is the bodyguard of superintendent of police, and if the superintendent of police is attacked, so he in the right of self-defense and in the right of defense of someone else's life, whose life saving is his duty, he can use it. But as I said, as Vyas sir also said, the use of force should be proportionate. So whether the question now would be whether his life was under threat. If the life was under threat, he is justified, let me tell you. And the stone pelting can cause death also. If it hits you straight in the head or in the eyes, it can be fatal. So this statement of yours explains it in that case. If he's,
you think the Delhi police at the Jantar Mantar protest should have shot at all the protesters, because there were stone pelting incidents there as well?
No. See, it depends. As I said, it depends. The use of force has to be proportionate. If the crowd is pelting stones and injuring the policeman, they have to save their life. So the use of pellet gun is justifiable if the crowd is, unruly and using violence. Now, I'm not saying 100% crowd was pelting stones. If there are some elements who become dangerous for the policeman, So they are also the citizens of the country. They also
Is it
their life
because
also has
it was the superintendent of police that was hurt, and because of which this dire action had to be taken, and because in the Delhi protests there was nobody at the level of a superintendent of police at a senior level. There were only constables who were on the ground and they were being attacked. Therefore, there was not such brutal force of using firearms that was seen.
See, let me tell you, firstly, use of brutal force on crowd is not at all advisable, not at all supported, let me tell you, first. Secondly, as Vaid sir said, AK-47 is not a right control weapon at all, because this person was in the personal security of the SP, that's why he carried AK-47, otherwise AK-47 is not a right control weapon. So Delhi police, what they have done, if someone has used pellet guns to disperse unruly crowds, violent crowds, they are very much within the law, rights provided by the law. Now here, I don't think he is using the right to disperse crowds. He is not using that clause. If he has used AK-47, he is trying to use the clause that someone's life, whose protection of life is his duty, is at risk. Only under that clause he can take protection. But
okay,
Bihar police
all right. That's your point of view. Let me also get Advocate Manasvi Thapar into the conversation. Advocate Thapar, how do you think the Bihar police and the Chief Minister of Bihar should tackle this very difficult situation they have found themselves in?
I think it's the massive failure of Chief Minister of Bihar, and it's not at one count; it's at many counts. I think the first thing, it's a fundamental right of the students to have a peaceful protest under Article 19(1)(b). Firing AK-47 is no reasonable restriction on any assembly, so it is completely annihilation of assembly. So this is completely contrary to the fundamental right which is guaranteed by the Supreme Court. Also the procedure required to fire is that you should take a permission of a magistrate. There has to be escalation sequence. There has to be minimum force to be utilized. Nothing of that sort had been done. It is directly firing through AK-47, and when you fire an AK-47, which is not a regular machinery, it is against a terrorist or against when there is a border issue at that particular time. That kind of escalation requires AK-47. Firing AK-47 at a crowd, that this machinery can kill anyone. So this attracts Section 307 of BNS, which is attempt to murder.
But Ashok Kumar is here saying that because the life of his superintendent of police was in jeopardy, and that could be the reason that the alleged AK-47 was used by the cop who was the bodyguard to safeguard the life of the superintendent of police. This is what he's saying.
How the life of the SP is under jeopardy when these students were, first of all, they were students, they were not militant students, they were students without any weapons, they were students peacefully protesting. How can peaceful protest of students who are under the age of 12 can have a jeopardy against anyone?
Okay, we don't know if they were under the age of 12. We don't know if all the protesters who gathered are actually all students. We know for a fact that stones were pelted at the police personnel who were trying to stop the protesters on the street.
As per the standard procedure, you have to use minimum force, and the minimum force does not mean firing AK-47. So this is completely against the standard procedure which has been established by multiple judgments of the Supreme Court and also by the police handbook. So this is completely against the entire understanding of the police force. So police is there to protect the citizens. Police is not there to fire against the citizens. Police is there to make sure the peaceful protest remains peaceful. It is not against it. So also there is a question on NHRC. NHRC within 24 hours in 2021 in Bengal, when such kind of incidents happened, issued notices. Why is NHRC silent when police is using AK-47 against its own students of the state? So this is something which I don't understand. When as a government you fail in examinations, you fail to create a leak-proof system. When students protest, you fire AK-47 against the students, and this is against the entire understanding of our constitutional democracy.
Okay, all right. Shekhar Vijayan is also on the telecast with me. Shekhar, has the government dug itself in a deeper hole with this incident coming to light?
Good evening, Megha. Good evening to all my fellow panelists. See, an examination crisis cannot be answered not just with AK-47 or with any firearm. It is dangerous. It's not the question of AK-47, but why is a firearm being used in the first place? The students may be wrong if they resort to violence, but an examination controversy is fundamentally a crisis of trust. If the state's answer to the crisis must be facts, accountability, and transparency, but not fear. And I think it's very strange. I've also seen the video. It looks very scary when you see somebody attacking you with a gun, and it is a peaceful protest at the end of the day. You cannot combat a protest like this with guns, firearms, pellets, which can cause harm to an individual. And these are, at the end of the day, Mega, these are students. These are students who are talking about something which is very dear and very important to them. They're talking about examination. I think it has to be dealt in a more sympathetic manner. It has to be dealt in a more empathetic manner. And what is more important is the government has to also be very conscious of what they're doing. If they're going to be using firearms, it is very scary, and more than scary, it can cause a lot of damage. You're talking about a AK-47 or even firearms being used, being used pellets. We've also seen in the Delhi protest which happened when pellets were used, that has also caused a lot of harm. When firearms were used or when lathi charge was also done, that has also caused a lot of harm. So the government has to be conscious about it, because with great power comes great responsibility, and they have to showcase that. Any protest which is happening is a peaceful protest. At the end of the day, the government should focus on how can they engage with them rather than building a trust.
I have to say that we keep saying that the protests were peaceful, but they, in actuality, no, we're not. We know for a fact that those stones were pelted. We know for a fact that these pepper sprays were used. We have seen videos of a number of cops that were, shoved and pushed, and mobs came onto the cops and they were hitting them. There was a woman, there were women cops that were injured as well. Of course, there have been instances where the cops have used lathi. They had lathis with nails on their lathis. They have used water cannon. They have used allegedly, purportedly, pellet guns have been used. So how should a cop protect himself or herself when there is such extreme violence that they are facing at the hands of these protesters, and having complete restraint and being calm despite all the chaos, and they are standing on the line of fire, and they know that they are the ones who are going to be the first people who are going to be attacked, because the students are angry, they're frustrated. There could be antisocial elements that may want to take advantage of these protests as well.
See, Megha, the law and order are supposed to protect us. The cops are supposed to protect us. I think it's the other way around. The fact is, a movement of this nature, which has been there for 47 days and long, there's always a risk of this movement becoming political. There's always the risk of the movement having certain antisocial elements joining in. As you were speaking about, the policemen getting beaten up, I can show you enough and more videos. There are so many videos which are viral on Instagram, on social media, where the policemen have also beaten up the students, and there's been
it has happened.
Yes. Around too. So it's a mixed bag. I think the state has to take accountability and responsibility for it. And what is really important is how do they engage with the students? You cannot have a peaceful protest becoming so violent so fast. That is no excuse for brandishing a gun and scaring people away. It is, if the policeman was not trained, suppose it shot the gun at somebody, and it would be even more dangerous. I'm just saying it's not about AK-47. It's about using firearms. We cannot be using firearms at students who are not who are not violent. Yes, there may be certain elements which are violent, but then they are trained to handle this. You cannot be beating up students. You cannot be shooting at them. You cannot be using pellets at them. You cannot be doing that. You're trained to handle students. You're put in a better way.
Okay, all right. Shekhar, thank you very much for speaking to me. I'm also thankful for the rest of my guests for being on the show and expressing their views. I'll take a short break at this time, and thanks for watching NewsX.